can't even bring a wallet. They don't get it, but I got it. I'm so iconic. Got your stacks up, but you ain't got no rings, hell yeah. Got my stacks up, I'm living out my dreams, hell yeah. Stretch this condo, I can fit a limousine, hell yeah. Ain't that ironic? I'm so iconic. I'm so iconic. Yeah, I'm so iconic. Yeah, they don't get it, but I got it. Ain't that ironic? I'm so iconic.
From the stadium that hosted Super Bowl 51 back in 2017, we are inside NRG Stadium in Houston.
Season. After getting a 2-year, $36 million contract by the Pittsburgh Steelers a few years ago back in 2022, and I'm sure Pittsburgh is very happy that they didn't attach any more years onto that deal.
And we are underway from Houston.
Cut by Baltimore. He's been cut by Houston. Maybe he signs a 1-year veteran minimum deal with Buffalo and Kansas City and he's fixed next year. But it's definitely a big fall off for the 20 receiver. Like Anthony Richardson, the next player I want to talk about was going to year number 2. The quarterback position, he was the 33rd overall pick.
Now a run. Here's the rookie from Penn State. And he'll get about 6 up to the 27-yard line.
A quick burst there, and he nicely bit off a pretty decent gain.
Ball on the 27. Here's 2nd and 4.
Will Levis. Man, I feel bad for Titans fans this year because they were really pumped up about what Will Levis could be in year number 2. Ryan Callahan and Alvin Ridley, who's not going to be featured in this video, but you can definitely mention him as one of the more disappointing players this year. But Will Levis, as a starter, 2-10 this year. 2-10. Pretty much one and done as his first full-time year as a starter, at least for the Titans. Levis in that 2-10 record had a 63% completion percentage, 2,091 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions on the year. He had 7 fumbles as a rookie. That went up to 10 fumbles this year. He got off to just an embarrassing start as well. It just feels like he was in like the biggest fight of the week in this meme on Twitter every single week. And he had the worst EPA in the NFL. Out of all qualified passers, out of 36 quarterbacks in the NFL, he ranked dead last behind every single quarterback that was qualified this year. So you could make an argument that Will Levis was the worst quarterback in the league this year, which is kind of a shame because I do think Will Levis has a ton of talent. And maybe this is just not his year. Maybe he just wasn't ready to start, have all that weight on his shoulders right now.
On their own side of the field on 4th down.
He makes some decisions. We'll see if he's going to be
got his target. That's complete. And he'll be taken down, but he does have first down yardage. They're able to keep the drive alive 7 yards that time with the decision to go for it. Proves to be a good one.
May not be on the Dolphins next year. It seems like he did request a trade at the end of the year. We'll see if he's going to stay on
the
next
35
feels like
now as
he's
they
got
come
it
up
gone,
on
right?
first
Tyreek
and
Hill is 30
10.
years old. Brees coming off one of the best receiving years we have seen since Cooper Kupp.
Play action. It's Lawrence.
1,799 yards. Leading the NFL this year. He actually played one more game than he did last year. 17 games, didn't get hurt at all. 959 yards, now from 1,799 yards. 81 catches, pretty much had 50 less targets, 7 less touchdowns. This was without Tua Tagovailoa at the time this year in the NFL.
On second down, they'll run it here. Looking for a seam, but finding none.
Top
He'll get back
100.
to the line of
Number
scrimmage, and
one
that's it.
best player in the NFL last year.
Now they'll be looking at a third down.
Follow up that year, basically like all your numbers played one more game this year. You're making about $30 million a year. Yeah,
Is this is 3rd and 10?
The NFL.
Now Lawrence.
We got one kicker and one kicker for this video. It's the only kicker that has pretty much
this pass is intercepted.
The best kicker.
And a terrific return as he takes this thing all the way down near the 20-yard line. That's kind of a double whammy. I mean, the interception on the opening drive, that's one thing, but to give him this field position, that's another.
Absolutely perfect start for this defense. They take the ball away on the opening possession. They know that their offense will get the ball to start the second half. They line them up in field goal position, and to me, they got a chance for a touchdown right here out of the gate.
First carry here for Joe Mixon. And not a whole lot of room to operate there on the first down run. He gets maybe 3.
That is not good whatsoever.
Yeah, that wasn't a big
Still
run, just a
perfect on
short
all the
one
shorter
there.
field
But guess
goals.
what?
20 to
Sometimes
29
you treat it
yards.
like boxing.
4,
You throw that
30 to
jab out
39
there, and you
yards,
throw it again, you throw it
7,
again,
40 to
then you come
49
with the big
yards,
punch
5
later.
to 8.
Maybe they're just trying to
50
set him
yards
up.
and on.
And he'll
6
be
of
hit
11.
as
So
he
it looks like
releases it, and that'll
power.
fall
He's been
incomplete.
over every single
Put
year
a check mark in the box where the defense coordinator was saying, how well can we stay with these receivers if we're in man coverage? Because he just did it on that one, forced the incompletion. That line to get bolder with his pass rush, won't it?
Absolutely, frees up your guys elsewhere.
Probably disappointing to his expectations, but this year, they really
Throwing
accommodated
now
and
is
you wonder
Stroud.
if Justin Tucker is going to be playing in the NFL next year. Could this be his last
Throw
game?
right side, taken in by Collins.
He's
in. Houston. Nico Collins, an 18-yard touchdown grab. And the Texans are on the board here first in the season opener.
That is Javonte Williams.
Extra point by Fairbairn, up and good.
Javonte Williams suffered that ACL tear back in the 2022 season, so I was always going to give him the benefit of the doubt during 2023, where he played 16 games. He had 774 rushing yards, averaged 3.6 yards per carry. It did not look like the same player he was in 2021 and in 2022 before that season-ending injury. And usually running backs coming off these major injuries are going to take a little bit more time to get acclimated back to what they were before the injury. So we are now over 2 years removed from that injury, and Javonte Williams was one of the worst running backs this year. He played one more game than last year, and he had 200 less rushing yards than he did in 2023. 139 carries, 513 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns. He averaged 3.7 yards per carry, 30 rushing yards per game. He had 52 catches for 346 yards, and this is the last year of Javonte Williams.
Jaguars come to the line to start their next drive. Threw an
There was just
interception
a
the
lot of
first
bad
time they
games
had the
for
football,
Javonte
wound up
Williams
leading
this
to a
year,
touchdown
where there
the
was
other way.
a plethora of
How do you
games
approach
with
drive
30
number
rushing
2?
yards.
Going back to your game plan coming in.
Chargers plays. He had a game against the Steelers over the year, 11 carries, 73 yards. He had a game against Vegas back at the end of November where he had 8 rushes for negative 2 yards, and his longest was 7 in that game. How do you even do that? In terms of rushing EPA, he was a bottom 10 running back in the NFL this year, and I just have higher expectations for him because he was so good before he tore his ACL. It's a contract year 2 with Sean Payton. He gets a new quarterback in Bo Nix. The offensive line should be better. Everything was better for Denver this year outside of Javonte Williams. Next of all, we'll talk about our first secondary member in this video, and it's going to be Sauce Gardner in the New York Jets. People are saying we can't even call him Sauce anymore. It's just too old of a nickname for how bad he was this year. As Sauce's first year in the NFL, his rookie season, he went to the year. He was arguably the best corner in the NFL in 2022, and he followed that up with a weak 2023 season as well. I don't know if he got too much to take off over the offseason. He ended up as the 33rd ranked corner according to PFF, and dropped to 24th in the NFL in the coverage grade department, and as a rookie, his passer rating allowed was at a 62.9. That's gone up all the way this year to an 83.3. He allows 454 yards this year, up from 366 last year. And Gardner wasn't bad this year relative to every corner in the league. He was still a top 40, top 30 corner in the league by most metrics. It's just he has the highest expectations going into the year. He's expected to be a top 3, 5, 10 corner in the NFL. So we went up far outside of that, more disappointing relative to your expectations going into the year. Let's stay on the top of the secondary. This time we're going to go into the safeties, and I want to talk about Nick. Right, worst years, but not the worst year of his career this year. Somehow made a Pro Bowl. He's not deserving that. Last year, Minka allowed a 67 QB rating against him. This year, that was down to 126. He allowed 373 yards this year, up from 169 last year. Now, he was hurt last year, so he has played 4 games this year, so that is but it feels like Minka has made a big time plays in the past. He's not that elite one-stop receiver. He's still good in that department. He's not as the best in the rest of his game for most of his time in Pittsburgh. He is ranked as the 43rd ranked safety in the NFL. He was 20th last year, 3rd in 2022. He was the 33rd out of 97 rated in their coverage department for safeties. 47 out of 91 in their run defense department. He had 1 interception this year. He had 96 total tackles. I know the Steelers secondary wasn't great. He was running in the second half of the year, but he's going to take down.
Yes, it's a safety. So troubles here offensively. I tell you, the noise in this dome, that has got to make it harder for these guys to hear.
Sometimes I find myself shouting up here, but you're right. If you can't communicate well and get off the snap count properly, it can cause big problems, and this qualifies as a big problem.
607 yards. 3 touchdowns. That is down from 892 yards last year, and he played the same amount of games, going from 7 touchdowns as well last year to 3 touchdowns, as I mentioned. This year, he had 5 rushing touchdowns last year, down to 1 this year, and he's had his lowest amount of rushing yards since that 2020 season. So now you're losing one of the best aspects of Deebo Samuel. That's why he's getting paid wide receiver 1 money, because he was this hybrid-style receiver that can do it all out of the backfield and out wide. You're not getting that from him anymore, and he is now 29 years old. I do wonder if Deebo and the Niners are going to part ways this offseason, either by getting cut or traded. Now, I would say my next player being disappointing isn't really his fault. It's just he had super high expectations going into the year. Could he break the rookie receiving record? Because Marvin Harrison Jr. had those expectations and all that hype going into year number 1. So I would say he fell short of those expectations, which were insanely high, but that still means it was a little bit disappointing. But I think this Arizona Cardinals offense as a whole was pretty much disappointing outside of maybe what Trey McBride did this year. You know, he could barely find the end zone. Marvin Harrison Jr. had 62 catches for 885 yards and 8 touchdowns, and those aren't good numbers for a rookie receiver, but he didn't look as explosive as maybe he once did at Ohio State this year. Malik Neighbors looked a lot better. Brian Thomas Jr. and Matt McConkey all looked better than Marvin Harrison Jr. this year, and he had better QB play than pretty much all of those guys outside of McConkey. He was definitely blessed with a better quarterback over in Arizona than what was going on in Jacksonville with Mac Jones at one point, and obviously everything that happened with the New York Giants this year. So I think just all things considered, Marvin Harrison Jr. did have a disappointing year, but I think he will bounce back in year number 2 and should get over that 1,000-yard threshold. Next up, I want to talk about somebody that got traded last offseason, and he held out wanting a new contract this year. That is Hassan Reddick of the New York Jets. Reddick held out for his first game of the season. He ended up playing just 10 games for the Jets this year. He finished with 1 sack for 10 games. He started 2 of them. He finished with 1 pass deflection, 1 forced fumble, and 14 total tackles, and just 3 QB hits. In those 10 games that he played, PFF had him graded as the 104th edge rusher in the NFL out of 118. It was just a disastrous season for Hassan Reddick and the New York Jets. They could not get him off. They could not put a free money deal, and he's going to be a free agent, so his time in New York is definitely over. I'm going to next player being disappointing back on the quarterback that we talked about earlier, but I talked about Anthony Richardson. I think Michael Pittman Jr. was disappointing this year just because I think Josh Downs and even Alec Pierce in their roles in this offense were more impactful than Michael Pittman. Pittman had the worst year since his rookie season back in 2020. He finished with 808 receiving yards, was the lowest since 2023 at 503, lowest reception since 2020, lowest touchdown since 2020 as well, and his lowest catch percentage of his career at 62.2%. First time ever having a negative receiving yard EPA season, the lowest amount of yak in his career, and the lowest amount of routes run. And even though he's played 16 games over the last 3 seasons, he looked like a true wide receiver 1 at the end of 2023 with Gardner Minshew throwing at the ball. And I think just Josh Downs and Alec Pierce were a little bit better, like I said, in their roles. It makes this look for the worst Michael Pittman this year. But Colts fans, you can let me know Who's more disappointing, Pittman or Richardson? Who does it come down? Whatever expectations you had of this player, just throw them out. Throw them out. They're done. His career may be over. That is Deshaun Watson in Cleveland. I think this probably comes down on Browns fans a little bit more. They were the only fan base that probably had any expectations for Watson this year, and he ended up being the worst quarterback in the NFL throughout 7 games before he ended up tearing his Achilles, where he went 1-6 in those 7 games. He had a 63% completion percentage, 1,148 yards, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, but honestly just looked terrible out there. I think he was so much worse than the stats give him credit for, because they got blown out by Dallas with him starting the season. They barely beat the Jaguars, who were one of the worst teams in the league. They lose to the Giants, one of the worst teams in the league as well, by 6. Lose to Vegas, Washington, Philly, and then Cincy in that game where he ended up tearing his Achilles. He's making so much money, and he may be injured all of the 2025 season as well. It is going to go down as one of the worst, if not the worst trade in NFL history, followed by the worst contract extension in NFL history, and I think that ends up making you one of the more disappointing players in the NFL, because we are so far from what he was in that 2020 season. He led the NFL passing yards. The only offensive lineman I'm going to have in this video is Jawan Taylor of the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs' offensive line as a whole this year was really good, but it was mainly on the interior. Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, and Trey Smith. As Jawan Taylor was not good whatsoever as their offensive tackle. He signed a massive 4-year, $80 million contract with the Chiefs in 2023, and he didn't have a good first year in Kansas City, and he followed that up with not much better of a year 2, where he ranked as the 61st offensive tackle out of 81 in the NFL, according to PFF. He wasn't great in the run block. He was slightly better in the pass blocking department, but was around league average. And for somebody making $20 million a year, that's pretty inexcusable. He had 17 penalties this year, which is very high for an offensive tackle. He allowed 7 sacks, 6 QB hits, and 37 total pressures. So they pretty much can't cut him until the end of the 2025 season, so we'll see if he's going to be better in year number 3. Let's say a team had to give up a valuable draft pick, and then you had to sign a 4-year, $76 million extension for this player, and he ended up being the worst rated corner in the NFL, 117 out of 117. Well, that's pretty much what happened with L'Jarius Sneed and the Tennessee Titans. So yeah, I gotta mention L'Jarius Sneed in this video. Sneed was arguably the worst corner in the NFL this season, and he's going to be making around $19 million a year in 2025. There is a potential out after the end of the 2025 season where they can afford to just take on $12 million in dead cap instead of cutting him this year at $35 million. But man, this guy was so good in Kansas City. He was one of the best corners in the league with Steve Spagnuolo and that Kansas City Chiefs defense. But maybe he was a product of that defense. He's still just 27 years old, and he just fell off a cliff this year. Maybe he just didn't fit this Titans defense well whatsoever, but you would have to say this is a disaster. But one of the big pickups of the Titans in that 2024 offseason. This Jets offense as a whole this year, super disappointing, and I wanted to talk about at least one Jet. I wasn't going to talk about Aaron Rodgers, but you could definitely mention him. I'm going to talk about Breece Hall, who was arguably the best running back in the NFL, or at least in those conversations after Christian McCaffrey going into this year, and he's not even close to those conversations right now. Breece appeared in 16 games this year, just down from 1 last year, 876 yards on the year, 5 touchdowns as well. He averaged 54 yards per game, 4.2 yards per carry. He didn't look as explosive as he did last year. That time, Braylon Allen played a little bit better than Breece. His rushing yards over expected dropped, rushing yards over expected carry dropped, his rushing yards EPA dropped. He had 5 fumbles compared to 2 last year. Basically every metric of Breece Hall's game this year was down from last year's season. So I'm not saying he was bad overall. I would still want Breece Hall starting on my team. He's better than Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, my favorite team's running backs. It's just what his expectations were going into the year.
As we're through one on EA Sports. Ready for the second quarter from Houston. It's the Texans in possession of the football. As they've got it with a 3rd down and less than a yard.
Under Armour knows athletes.
It showcases every ounce.
The Goat House is back, previewing 2025 NFL free agency. We'll go through every position group, and I'll give you the notable free agents that you need to know for this upcoming offseason. Something we do at this time every single year, so I'm excited to break it down. The free agency quarterback class led by Sam Darnold having a huge breakout season, a massive breakout season with Minnesota. And the question for Darnold this offseason from everybody, I think, will he be as good on a different team as he is right now with Minnesota, away from Kevin O'Connell, away from all those weapons, that system? And most people will doubt him a little bit. Understandable. So will there be teams hesitant to give him that big payday? At the end of the day, he probably will get a payday, whether it's from Minnesota or a different team. A well below average quarterback before Minnesota, now above average. But he is improving for sure. So definitely the big quarterback to watch. Then he had a couple Steelers quarterbacks. Russell Wilson playing very well this year. A little on the older side. Probably, teams will probably be only interested in giving a 1-year deal, maybe 2 max to him. People, teams might be a little afraid. They might fear he'll go back to the Broncos here last year. Bo Nix playing well with Broncos this year. So is it just a Steelers system thing with Russell Wilson? Teams will be scared, but most likely maybe ends up back with Pittsburgh, and Justin Fields most likely goes somewhere else. But can he be the starter? Steelers offense was very underwhelming with him, and then still winning though, and then better with Russell Wilson. Obviously, his days with Chicago didn't go great, but the Bears really, everyone knows what's going on with Chicago right now. So I think there'll be teams that would be optimistic about them working with Fields, and he'll probably be on the cheaper side. Cooper Rush, every time he's had to come in for Dallas over the years, and this year he's played fairly well. I don't think a team's going to be dying to get him in as a starter. They might get him in, and then, might be one of those teams looking for a bridge quarterback, or a team that, hey, we want to find a starter to the draft, but draft's not here yet. Let's get Cooper Rush, so I can see that. Zach Wilson obviously had high potential going into the Jets, as a rookie out of BYU, kind of like Sam Darnold when he was coming out of USC going to the Jets. So now working with the Broncos, working with Sean Payton, look what Bo Nix doing. So there might be teams somewhat interested, not at a high price, obviously. Kyle Trask is a very interesting one at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Was a big time, well, not a big time, but a solid prospect out of Florida a few years ago. And seeing what the Buccaneers are doing, developing quarterback, being in that room with Baker Mayfield, team might go, hey, we might want to, this might be the guy we bring in with a rookie to have a competition here. So he might have some upside. And some more guys to mention: Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, who's starting right now. Heineke's always been a pretty decent backup, but you see those notable guys to kind of keep in mind when it comes to this upcoming free agency, this upcoming offseason. Pretty solid running back free agency class led by Najee Harris. Obviously, really solid running back, still on the younger side, still could have some upside. Definitely could be a market for him. Javonte Williams, like to think he still has upside. Helped him a lot in North Carolina, playing pretty well for the Broncos. Kind of sneaky catching the ball, too. Aaron Jones has been a solid back. Obviously, you have to think he can't be getting any better, even though he's playing fairly well for the Vikings right now. Probably be a 1-year deal from someone, whether it's Vikings. J.K. Dobbins, really solid back, just cannot stay healthy. Where you see the difference with the Chargers with and without him. Nick Chubb, injured once again. Obviously very good if healthy and has time to recover. Rico Dowdle looks legit for the Cowboys right now. I'm going to assume Dallas probably wants him back. You see some restricted free agents, a couple that are notable. Kind of going back to the Steelers. We already talked about 2 cornerbacks from the Steelers, but Jalen Warren, they're going to need at least one of Najee Harris or Jalen Warren back, but he is restricted along with the Niners' physical running back Jordan Mason. And since they're restricted, their teams have the option to put a tender on them where they get a draft pick if somebody signs them, or if they go to free agency as a restricted free agent, which they are, another team signs them to an offer sheet. Their original teams of the Steelers and the 49ers have the opportunity to match that deal. So you could say more likely those guys are back with their teams. And then some more notable guys: A.J. Dillon, who's been injured this year. Tyler Johnson, who's been really solid for the Buffalo Bills, really solid pass-catching back. Elijah Mitchell's been really good for the Niners when healthy, but then sometimes with these running backs you take away from the Niners, how good are they? And Cam Akers has been a solid back as well. So, again, pretty solid group of running backs here. And the wide receiver free agent class led by T. Higgins, obviously the star of not only this group, but maybe free agency. This group consists of, it feels like, mainly veteran guys that maybe are declining a little bit, but could still ball out. Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, guys like those. But T. Higgins leads the way. Obviously a big-time contested catch receiver, big-time downfield threat, big-time red zone threat. Can the Bengals pay him on top of, the priority has to be Jamar Chase, their star, Baltimore star, their big-time star receiver. Higgins sitting out a little bit of games this year. I think it's because he's not happy to be on the franchise tag, and he knows mainly he's going to be a free agent. He doesn't want to risk his payday, so any minor thing will sit out. Players do that sometimes, but we already see the Patriots link to T. Higgins. How about the Titans with Brian Callahan there? They traded DeAndre Hopkins, Boyd's a free agent, or former Bengal. So they could be looking to add a guy like that. There'll be several takers here, but Chris Godwin maybe doesn't get as much money just because he's coming off that injury that was pretty brutal, and he was having a career year before that. That's saying something. He is one of the very best slot receivers in all of football. So most likely, I would say, be back with the Bucs, but there'll be some takers just because mainly this free agent class is full of veteran guys that, it's one-year deal guys. Higgins and Godwin are seven. Higgins is a bit above Godwin, but they separate themselves from the rest. Stephon Diggs was playing very well before the injury, so obviously still has some juice left in the tank for sure. Amari Cooper is still waiting for him to come alive in Buffalo right now. That could determine his fate in the offseason. Keenan Allen's actually playing pretty well right now. He's starting the year off a little slow. He was a little banged up, and it's like, this guy's getting slower, he's declining, but lately he's been playing pretty well, and there's really not much going for that pass game of the Bears. He's making some clutch plays, still knows how to get open, so he could have a pretty decent taker on a one-year deal. DeAndre Hopkins has some drops this year, but obviously he's still a very good contested catcher. Playing fairly well with the Chiefs. Some other guys, speaking of the Chiefs, Hollywood Brown, who's about to come back, so that could determine his fate here in the offseason, how he plays, when he comes back. Darius Slayton's a sneaky one. Josh Palmer has been pretty decent with the Chargers. Deontay Johnson, which actually today was just waived by the Ravens. I think it's more, the talent.
I need to add that the offensive cards, I have a Lamello rookie card. I have a CJ Stroud rookie card. I even have a Shai.
We see why it's a team game there.
He doesn't really showcase his talent out there, but I do think it's more of character or just not wanting to be there. So I think the talent is in there still, but he's again currently a free agent. Someone picks him up shortly after recording this. One day waiver claims he will be a free agent again, obviously with the free agent class options. So those are the notable receivers, and T. Higgins will get a notable guy in the entire free agency. Not the best tight end group, which it rarely ever is. Mike Gesicki's played pretty well for the Bengals, but he's not going to fit everyone. Obviously, mainly just a big receiver that plays tight end, Juwan Johnson. Kind of similar. Obviously, very, very talented. Tyler Conklin, I think, is pretty underrated. He played well at Minnesota. He played well at the Jets. Maybe it's a little inconsistent. Some games with the Jets he disappears. Some games he's making big-time plays. I like him. I actually think he might be the best in this group, Matt. Mo Alley Cox has been decent for the Colts. Austin Cooper, Zach Ertz could retire. Stone Smart is coming out of nowhere, playing very well for the Chargers right now. He's also restricted free agent, so it's not like he's up for grabs for anybody. That is a sneaky one. Very likely ends up back with the Chargers, but maybe you'd rather have a guy like that than some of these other guys that are at the end of their career and you know exactly what you're going to get. But yeah, not the strongest class here. Not really surprised. Free agent offensive tackles, some good ones, but a common theme here. A lot of guys that are aging have durability concerns, but again, very, very good. Ronnie Stanley is a big-time tackle when he's healthy. He's been injured almost every single year of his career, but again, he can still play. It's not like he's too old or anything like that, so we'll see where he ends up. Cam Robinson played fairly well for the Jags. He's playing pretty damn well for the Vikings right now, but the Vikings will get Darisaw back, so maybe Cam Robinson is more likely to go elsewhere. It's definitely a starting left tackle. Morgan Moses is very good. He's very, very solid right tackle. Played well recently for the Ravens, and this year for the Jets. Did have an injury. He does have durability concerns. He's up there in age, but you get a pretty good tackle. I think teams would be dying to have him off a one-year deal. You probably want more than that. Maybe you have to offer a 2-year deal. Tyrone Smith's kind of a similar situation. Declined a little bit up there in age, but very solid if healthy. Larry Jackson, pretty solid left tackle for the Rams, a lot younger than these other guys we talked about. Jedrick Wills has been a little bit of a letdown. He has some durability concerns, but is a big-time prospect for a reason. So you think that maybe he still has some upside. Patrick Bakari, Trent Brown, DJ Humphries, Dan Moore, other notable names that have starting experience and start for you, but yeah, it's mainly a group of really solid, but have, a little older, have some durability issues. So there's be some risk. He'd love to have some of these guys. He's dying to get some, but a little bit of risk, obviously, depending on the contract. And again, this offseason, we will have all kinds of free agency coverage, predictions, rumors, and then grades after the signings are happening. So make sure to like, subscribe, and notifications on. We also have weekly coverage of the NFL with weekly picks, power rankings, score predictions, bets, and a lot more. So if you're new, check that out. I appreciate it. But the interior offensive line free agents, headlined by Trey Smith, the Chiefs' star guard. He's going to get a big-time payday. This is one of the top guys of all of free agency, not just interior offensive line. Zach Martin, obviously a little up there in age, but been one of the better guards in the last how many years. James Daniels played pretty well for the Steelers. Brandon Scherps had a really good career with Washington and now with Jacksonville. A little up there in age, but he's still very, very solid. So we'd love to have him on a 2-year deal. Kevin Zeitler obviously played well with several different teams right now with the Lions. Brian Kelly, it's always rumors that could retire early, not super early. So I guess we'll monitor that, but a very solid center that's plays for the Colts. Drew Dahlman, center of the Falcons. Other one, Austin Corbett, Panthers. Hernandez, now at the Cardinals, playing a little better. Bozeman is the center of the Chargers. And Aaron Banks, I still think has some upside. San Francisco 49ers guard. So those are some notable interior offensive linemen to watch. Pretty good at the top. Then you see a bit of a drop-off there. I mean, a star guy with Trey Smith, a star guy right now that he is the NFL with Martin. And then some pretty solid. Sure, very, very solid. And then you have Daniels, and then again, good players. I feel like they need the right scheme. There is a bit of a drop-off after those top-tier guys, but there are a lot of teams after Trey Smith. Remember the guard market last year? See good players, bidding war for good players, and then they end up getting crazy amount. And I think what Trey Smith is going to get, so it might be crazy for this interior offensive lineman, especially Smith. The edge rushers of free agency, a good amount of guys, kind of like the receivers, a good amount of guys that have been really solid, still are pretty good, but they're definitely up there in age. Are they declining a little bit? But Flo Mack, I mean, again, been around for a while, but still a very good pass rusher. Marcus Lawrence is still very, very good. He's on the field. Was beat up. He had durability concerns throughout his career, but really effective stop and run. And then on the same boat as those guys, you have guys like Matthew Judon, who's a veteran guy, not quite the same as what he was a few years ago, but pretty solid. But then you got some guys that are a little bit younger. Josh Sweat, very solid Eagles pass rusher. He should have a decent market. Azeez Ojulari, there was interest in him at the trade deadline. He's played very, very solid for the Giants. I still think he has upside. Does have some durability concerns, but he is on the younger side. So Chase Young's weird. Like, how big of a free agent is he? He's good, productive. Still think there's got to be a little upside in there, but every year he kind of just sits around in free agency and no one's that interested. So it's hard to, even though you think he could be a big-time free agent, it's hard to actually label him that. And then you got some sneaky guys. Patrick Jones is a really sneaky one. He plays for the Vikings, has several sacks, really good production. That's coming in off the rotation, off the bench. The rotation guy being that productive. So he could be a starter somewhere. Hassan Reddick, obviously more talented to be in the notable list, but talented enough, I should say, but maybe declining a little bit. And then he's won a big contract, and he's went through agencies, and the Jets don't want to give him that, and other teams didn't even want him because they weren't going to be able to trade him. It's a whole mess. He probably won't play unless he gets X amount of dollars. That's kind of what it feels like. So he might sit around for a little bit. Malcolm Kuntz of the Raiders, an interesting one. He's injured this year. Last year had 8 sacks. Looks really solid. He's young with upside. But coming off an injury, and then people will go, where's he at? And then did a lot of his production come playing from, with Max Crosby. Some teams would I can't tell if he's going to be like a boom or bust free agent or if someone's going to steal him for kind of cheap, but the guy with upside is going to get a bargain deal, a great deal, or is someone who's going to pay him off the sacks numbers 2 years ago thinking he has upside. Is it a boom or bust in that case because he's coming off the injury? Can he repeat all that? So he's an interesting one. Dante Fowler Jr. playing very, very well for the Commanders. He's bounced around teams. Teams have passed on him, so I don't think he'll be that sought out after. He's played very well. And Joe Tryon was a first-round pick for a reason. Was a really good prospect out of Washington. Hasn't fully produced. Has some flashes. He's so athletic here and there for the Buccaneers. But you have to think, he's been underwhelming. But you have to think he still has upside. So you got a mixture of guys that are, long-time veterans. Maybe they're not the most durable, but not major injury concern.
Hey, it's Ryan. Is this your holiday commercial? It's just stuff I picked up for $5 from the yard stand. Oh, good.
That'll be
And then you
licensed
got
to take
guys
some
that are
shots
pretty
downfield.
solid and might actually still have some upside. So a pretty decent group here from the edge position. The interior defensive line group of free agency, far and away the headliner for this is Milton Williams. He could be pretty versatile across the defensive line, but he is really breaking out this year. We already kind of thought he was solid, and we knew that breakout was coming. Just a phenomenal player, phenomenal pass rusher from the interior. Or if this team could line him up. Again, you move around different alignments across the defensive line. We saw that when he was at college as well. He still has upside. He's playing great right now, so I think he'll get a big payday. The Eagles have quite a few guys to pay up front, so that'll be interesting to see if they would love to get him back, and they definitely could. They're not afraid to go over the cap and work their way around with constructing contracts. I think you have B.J. Hill, who's had a pretty decent career. The Bengals, D.J. Jones, really good run stuffer for the Broncos. He's not going to get the field for 90% snaps, be less than 50. A good job stopping the run. Fine. Another guy playing all right this year. I think he still has upside. Levi Onwuzurike of the Lions. Another guy, Young. Football still ahead. Best football still ahead of him. He's played really well for the Lions. He could be a big one. He could be number 2 on this list with the upside. Osa Odigizua of the Cowboys. Been fairly solid, could be a little better stop and run more consistently. Then more options. Jerry Tillery's played all right for the Vikings this year. Derek Notty's had a pretty good career. The Chiefs, more of a nose tackle, just like Greg Gaines. These guys are in there for early downs, running downs. And Sebastian Joseph Day has been a decent rotation tackle, sometimes starter moving downs.
And this nearly an interception, but it's
Milt Williams leads this group by far. If teams need an interior defensive lineman, teams will be desperate for a guy like this, but they're all a little different. Some of these guys aren't going to play nose, some won't play over the guard, and some will. So they're all a little different, but again, Williams is the big shot. He's the big one of this group. Linebackers led by Nick Bolton, obviously been very, very good with the Chiefs, and still has good football ahead of him. Well, these other guys, you could argue maybe a guy like Bobby Wagner's a little better right now, but Bobby Wagner, Levante David, Dre Greenlaw, these guys are definitely up there in age. Really, Wagner and David, they still can ball out. I think David's done, very soon. He's probably going to finish his career with the Bucs. I think you mentioned that. Wagner still balls out, but how many years do these guys have? Greenlaw trying to come back from injury doesn't look quite right yet. He's out there healthy. Zach Bond's been very good for the Eagles. I think teams will be a little hesitant. He's only worked out in this scheme. That's why teams are a little careful with linebackers. They don't spend a lot of money. So I think chances are Bond is back to the Eagles. Ernest Jones has been bouncing around a bit with the trades this year, but been really solid with Seahawks. I think he'll stick there on an extension. More options, Kaiser White, Cardinals, Elaine Roberts, pretty solid run stopper. Inside linebacker, Spillane, kind of flashy, decent linebacker. Raiders, and Derek Barnes, I think, guy with the lines that has some experience and still think he has some upside as well. So, some big names from this linebacker group here. Pretty solid cornerback class for free agency, led by TJ Reed of the Jets. Obviously been very, very good with that. And even though there's a lot of notable names, a lot of good players at this position that we're talking about, I really think Reed separates himself. It's based on what teams will want. I think there'll be a bidding war. Any teams will really be after him. He's pretty versatile. He can play zone. Equally effective in zone. He is a man. So I think that really separates him, actually. So I think teams will be after him. Javarius Ward has been really good. I mean, last year he had a monster year for 49ers, and obviously can still play. Carlton Davis currently injured. Some things popped up for him this year, but he had a really good career with the Bucs. Played fairly well. The Lions are better with him. Myron Murphy's been an interception machine. Obviously, can play very, very well from inside or out. Sewell Douglas has been great for the Buffalo Bills. Asante Samuel Jr., another one of those guys. I think that has some upside of the Chargers. And you have Jonathan Jones, which he's declined a little bit. Another guy, man covering experience, inside, outside experience. Mike Hilton has declined, but was one of the better slot corners in the last several years. But he has declined a bit as well. Jones a little bit, Stephon Gilmore's a little bit declined. Dante Jackson played decent.
A good chance this is
four down territory if they're unable to convert. Season. But again, pretty good group led by DJ Reed. I think he's going to get a payday. It's good to be at the top of your class. You're probably getting overpaid. Not that they're not deserving, but that's probably the case because there could be a bidding war here for more than just Reed, but the top of your squad comes to those points. Safety class is sneaky good, and there's nothing sneaky about Javon Holland. It's a big-time safety that can be a star. Maybe you could argue he already is. Ton of upside, best footballs ahead of him. I think several teams would love to get their hands on him. Dolphins, unfortunately, got to let guys walk like Christian Wilkins last year. Will they let the same thing be the case with a guy like Holland? Be a very interesting for him. Abunga in and out, mainly out with injuries this year, but we've seen him play at a very, very high level. Still pretty young. Cam Bynum, rangy playmaking, safety, played well for the Vikings. They tried to reach an extension earlier in the year. It didn't happen. The Vikings will be very careful with safeties, but they feel like in that system, they'll come in, they can elevate. But Flores probably wouldn't mind to get his hands on Holland as well. At the same time, Andre Cisco, rangy, playmaking safety, kind of has his highs and his lows, but again, I liked him a lot of Syracuse's tackling and angles, kind of the issue. Big time playmaking. Very, very freaky athlete as well. Justin Reed's been very solid with the Chiefs. A lot of a man cover scheme or a cover two scheme. A couple ratings. Javon Marek, young player, young safety out of TCU. He's been a little underwhelming. Decent, but a little underwhelming. Everyone thought he could be a big time, like maybe a Pro Bowl safety in his future. He's interesting because he's played safety in the back end, played more free safety with the Raiders. And he was at TCU like a star prospect. Played every position. Like he played strong safety, free safety, but most of his reps actually came in the slot. So I wonder if he's like better off there, man coverage scheme, having man on tight end. So that's a curious and interesting one on who gets him. I think he can. I want him to use kind of like Kyle Hamilton. Not going to be as good as Kyle Hamilton, but if he goes to the right team, watch for him to really emerge as what he was supposed to be. And his teammate Marcus Epps been pretty solid. He's solid with the Eagles and the Raiders, obviously, going to be a free agent. So they have their duo. Tyrann Mathieu, a little up there in age, obviously can still play at a decent level. Julian Blackmon, I think he's fairly solid. He sat around for a long time in free agency, so I don't think he'll be that soft out after. Jeremy Chin, always been underrated, played pretty well for the Commanders this year. Then Justin Simmons, guys like Justin Simmons, Jordan Boyer declining a little bit, better guys. Yeah, Simmons has been a little disappointed too on the Falcons. He's got two deep free safeties back there. It just doesn't work well together. Bates is the guy. The safeties led by Holland's a really good group. And obviously there's more free agents than the guys we talked about, but we're still in season kind of as a bit of a preview, something I do every year. Right before or right in the offseason, we look at even more. Ranking, predictions, all my thoughts, tons of predictions. Right, and greatest hits. We're very active on social media, and then we're pumping out great videos like crazy.
And they'll send the tight end in motion here. Back to throw. Here's Stroud. And that one goes incomplete. They tried something out of the bag of tricks, but it's incomplete and now second down.
Well, after watching him ring the bell that many times and put the ball in the end zone throwing it, you had to figure they had to bring some type of pressure. They had to change things up on defense.
And able to get to him, put him on the ground, so maybe just something to throw him off a little bit.
Yeah, that had to feel a lot better for
I have chosen Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, the tribe of Judah. I have filled him with the Spirit of God, wisdom, understanding, knowledge, all kinds of skill. Make artistic designs for work in gold, silver, and bronze, cut and set stones, work in wood, and to engage in all kinds of crafts. Moreover, I have appointed Holiab, son of Ahisamach, from the tribe of Dan, to help him. Also, I have given ability to all the skilled workers to make everything I have commanded you. Tent of meeting, the Ark of the Covenant law, with the atonement cover on it, and all the other furnishings of the tent, the table and its articles, the pure gold lampstand, and all its accessories, the altar of incense, the altar of burnt offering and all its utensils, the basin with its stand, and also the woven garments, both the sacred garments for Aaron, the priest, and the garments for his sons when they serve as priests, and the anointing oil and fragrant incense for the holy place. You are to make them just as I commanded you. And the Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, you must observe my Sabbaths. This will be a sign between me and you for the generations to come, so you may know that I am the Lord who makes you holy. Observe the Sabbath, because it is holy to you. Anyone who desecrates it is to be put to death. Those who do any work on that day must be cut off from their people. For 6 days' work is to be done. The seventh day is a day of Sabbath rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day is to be put to death. The Israelites are to observe the Sabbath, celebrating it for the generations to come as a lasting covenant. It will be a sign between me and the Israelites forever. For in 6 days, the Lord made the heavens and the earth. On the seventh day, he rested and was refreshed. When the Lord finished speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai, he gave him the 2 tablets of the covenant law, tablets of stone, inscribed by the finger of God. Exodus 32. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered round Aaron and said, "Come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses, who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." Aaron answered them, "Take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing and bring them to me." So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they handed him and made it into an idol, cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. Then they said, "These are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, "Tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord." So the next day the people rose early, sacrificed burnt offerings, and presented fellowship offerings. Afterward, they sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go down. These people whom you brought up from Egypt have become corrupt. They have been quick to turn away from what I commanded them and have made themselves an idol cast in the shape of a calf. They have bowed down to it and sacrificed to it and have said, 'These are your gods, Israel.'
They're being shut out here in the second half after a decent first half offensively. And they need their best drive of the game right here. And they finally do get him, but Alford reaches the 27. A huge play there for Houston. 46 yards.
Despite writing it down on my notes, I never give enough credit to the offensive line, and we have to here. The protection, that's what made this play a success. Quarterback had to wait for his crossing route to develop.
Say, it was with evil intent that he brought them out, killed them in the mountains, to wipe them off the face of the earth. Relent. Do not bring disaster on your people. Remember your servants Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, to whom you swore by your own self. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give your descendants all this land I promised them, and it will be their inheritance forever. Then the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened. Moses turned and went down the mountain with the 2 tablets of the covenant law in his hands. They were inscribed on both sides, front and back. The tablets were the work of God. The writing was the writing of God, engraved on the tablets. When Joshua heard the noise of the people shouting, he said to Moses, "There is the sound of war in the camp." Moses replied, "It is not the sound of victory. It is not the sound of defeat. It is the sound of singing that I hear." Moses approached the camp and saw the calf and the dancing. His anger burned, and he threw the tablets out of his hands, breaking them to pieces at the foot of the mountain. And he took the calf the people had made and burned it in the fire. Then he ground it to powder, scattered it on the water, and made the Israelites drink it. He said to Aaron, "What did these people do to you, that you led them into such great sin?" "Do not be angry, my lord," Aaron answered. "You know how prone these people are to evil. They said to me, 'Make us gods who will go before us.' As for this fellow Moses, who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." So I told them, Whoever has any gold jewelry, take it off. Then they gave me the gold, and I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf. Moses saw that the people were running wild, and that Aaron had let them get out of control and so become a laughingstock to their enemies. So he stood at the entrance to the camp and said, "Whoever is for the Lord, come to me." All the Levites rallied to him, and he said to them, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Each man strap a sword to his side. Go back and forth through the camp from one end to the other, each killing his brother and friend and neighbor." Levites did as Moses commanded, and that day about 3,000 of the people died. Then Moses said, "You have been set apart to the Lord today, for you were against your own sons and brothers, and he has blessed you this day." Next day Moses said to the people, "You have committed a great sin. Now I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make atonement for your sin." So Moses went back to the Lord and said, "Oh, what a great sin these people have committed. They have made themselves gods of gold. But now, please forgive their sin. But if not, then blot me out of the book you have written." The Lord replied to Moses, "Whoever has sinned against me, I will blot out of my book. Now go, lead the people to the place I spoke of, and my angel will go before you. However, when the time comes for me to punish, I will punish them for their sin." And the Lord struck the people with a plague because of what they did with the calf Aaron had made. Exodus 33. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Leave this place, you and the people you brought up out of Egypt. Go up to the land I promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Say, I will give it to your descendants. I will send an angel before you and drive out the Canaanites, Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, Jebusites. Go up to the land flowing with milk and honey. But I will not go with you, because you are a stiff-necked people, and I might destroy you on the way." When the people heard these distressing words, they began to mourn, and no one put on any ornaments. For the Lord had said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites, you are a stiff-necked people. If I were to go with you even for a moment, I might destroy you. Now take off your ornaments, and I will decide what to do with you." So the Israelites stripped off their ornaments at Mount Horeb. Now Moses used to take a tent and pitch it outside the camp some distance away.
That one a backbreaker as they wind up converting their own fourth.
Outside the camp.
Not totally home free yet, but it's
all the
looking
people
good.
rose and stood at the entrances to their tents, watching Moses until he entered the tent. As Moses went into the tent, the pillar of cloud would come down and stay at the end.
Too tough to hold on it out. It's second down.
People saw the pillar of cloud standing at the defense, and they're very cohesive in their coverage. As soon as he cut inside, they broke on the football and met it as the ball got there and forced the incompletion. One speaks to a friend. Then Moses would return to the camp. But his young aide Joshua, son of Nun, did not leave the tent. Moses said to the Lord, "You have been telling me, lead these people, but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. You have said, I know you by name, and you have found favor with me. If you are pleased with me, teach me your ways so I may know you and continue to find favor with you. Remember that this nation is your people." The Lord replied, "My presence will go with you. I will give you rest." Your presence does not go with us. You will not send us up from here. How will anyone know that you are pleased with me and with your people unless you go with us? What else will distinguish me and your people from all the other people on the face of the earth? And the Lord said to Moses, "I will do the very thing you have asked, because I am pleased with you and I know you by name." Then Moses said, "Now, show me your glory." And the Lord said, I will cause all my goodness to pass in front of you, and I will proclaim my name, the Lord, in your presence. I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy. I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. But he said, you cannot see my face. No one may see me and live. Then the Lord said, there's a place near me. You may stand on a rock. When my glory passes by, I will put you in a cleft in the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will remove my hand, and you will see my back, but my face will not be seen.
Now with his third touchdown and his first ever
Exodus
NFL
34.
game. And the
The Lord said to
Jaguars
Moses,
are closing in on a
chisel
winning
out
start
2
to the
stone
year as
tablets
they
like the
extend
first
their
one.
fourth-quarter lead.
I will write on them the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke.
New York ready, and here
Ready
we
in the
go
morning,
as he sends this one away.
come up on Mount Sinai. Present yourself to me there on top of the mountain. No one is to come with you or be seen anywhere on the mountain. Not even the flocks and herds may graze in front of the mountain. So Moses chiseled out 2 stone tablets like the first ones and went up Mount Sinai early in the morning, as the Lord had commanded him. And he carried the 2 stone tablets in his hands. And the Lord came down from the cloud and stood there with him and proclaimed his name, the Lord. And he passed in front of Moses, proclaiming, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children, the sin of the parents, to the 3rd and 4th generation. Moses bowed to the ground at once and worshipped. Lord, he said, if I have found favor in your eyes, then let the Lord go with us. Although this is a stiff-necked people, forgive our wickedness and our sin, and take us as your inheritance. Then the Lord said, I am making a covenant with you. Before all your people I will do wonders never before done in any nation in all the world. The people you live among will see how awesome is the work that I, the Lord, will do for you. Obey what I command you today. I will drive out before you the Amorites, Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Be careful not to make a treaty with those who live in the land where you are going. They will be a snare among you. Break down their altars, smash their sacred stones, and cut down their Asherah poles. Do not worship any other god. For the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. Be careful not to make a treaty with those who live in the land. For when they prostitute themselves to their gods and sacrifice to them, they will invite you. You will eat their sacrifices. And when you choose some of their daughters as wives for your sons, and those daughters prostitute themselves to their gods,
Hello?
Hello?
Why did you just sit in silent?
Because it was in the times. You played 7 more minutes. And you left.
I didn't know.
I didn't make our sense.
Huh?
I didn't make our sense.
What do you mean that doesn't make sense? You rushed me for no reason.